Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Before we get any further into this video, I want to add an immediate disclaimer. If the title already did not make it obvious, yes, this video will have spoilers. I will be discussing in detail the endings and culprits of the following 10 Nancy Drew games. This video does have spoilers. You have been warned. Moving on to the actual subject matter. I've been thinking a lot lately about the importance of mystery endings. Whether it's a book, TV show, movie, or video game, a mystery can really be summed up by the quality of its ending. This is because the whole point of a mystery is to uncover an interesting reveal at the end. Sure, there should be good puzzles, characters, scripts, and locations along the way. But if the culprit and the ending fall flat, then the whole mystery falls flat. Therefore, when I look at my list of some of my least favorite Nancy Drew games, they all have one thing in common. The culprits and the endings just are not good. But which culprits and endings are the worst? You fellow detectives seem to enjoy when I get a chance to air my snark in these videos, and I am happy to oblige. To answer the question of which culprits and endings are worst, and hopefully create an interesting ranking video, I have come up with the following 3 criteria by which to score the games. First, and most importantly, is the actual culprit themselves a good culprit? Is their motive, means, and opportunity clear? The culprit needs to make sense, actually have an interesting reason for committing whatever crime they did, and when the culprit is ultimately revealed, our interaction with them should be tense and exciting. Second, how is the writing and script at the end of the game? Does it clarify any missing pieces? Does it reveal information to use in an exciting and organic way? Most importantly, the writing at the end of a mystery should never be an exposition dump. We should have all the clues that we need by the end of the mystery so that we could, conceivably, pull a Sherlock Holmes and discover the culprit on our own. And third, how is the end puzzle? A good end puzzle should enhance both the culprit and the writing, not detract from them. If the end puzzle halts momentum by being too difficult, breaks immersion by pulling us out of our beautiful first-person lens, or just plain doesn't make sense, then the whole ending can be ruined. I have scored each game based on these 3 categories, with a parameter of 3 stars each. The more stars a game receives in each category, the more poorly it did in that particular area. This means that a game with 3 stars isn't the worst offender, but a game with 9 stars? Well, that's a crappy ending. One last final spoiler warning. I hope it goes without saying, but yes, this video does have detailed spoilers for the endings and culprits of the following 10 Nancy Drew games. You have been warned a second time. But now, without further ado, let's get to ranking. Number 10, Haunting of Castle Malloy. This game is unique in that the culprit, per se, isn't a culprit in the traditional sense. Fiona Malloy is at least partially responsible for the disappearance of Matt Simmons, but this action certainly wasn't purposeful. It's clear that Fiona's years of isolation, coupled with her childhood trauma, have led her to have significant difficulties interacting with and understanding people. While the element of no real culprit is sort of disappointing, I like the unique angle that this game took with their culprit, so it only deserves 1 star in the culprit category. The writing is also fairly solid, which means it only deserves 1 star in that category as well. We've been able to glean up to this point that the quote-unquote banshee flying around Castle Malloy could actually be Fiona because of the jetpack we found and all of the clues in the tower room. When we actually meet her, Nancy has a fun little conversation with the banshee herself until she gets shoved in a hole with Matt, who explains his predicament to Nancy through a locked door. This whole sequence leans a teensy bit heavy on exposition dumps, but not too much. Where this ending really struggles, though, is with the puzzles. Nancy has to assemble a rocket to escape from the underground lab, which would have been a fine puzzle on its own if it hadn't been accompanied by a chemical sorting puzzle and various other lengthy puzzles. This game was already puzzle-heavy, but the puzzles at the end lengthen the time between the culprit reveal and the ultimate resolution to a pretty painful extent, which means this game gets 3 stars for having a bad end puzzle. Haunting of Castle Malloy definitely doesn't have the worst ending in the series, but just enough to make this list. Number 9, Trail of the Twister. To start, the culprit for this game is mostly fine. Scott seems like a very reasonable villain, and his bitter attitude for the entirety of the game supports this. There's also plenty of clues that lead up to his reveal, and his motive, means, and opportunity are clear. Trail of the Twister therefore gets 1 star in the culprit category. Where things start to fall apart is in the execution of the ending itself. Nancy first confronts Scott out in the middle of nowhere, when there conveniently happens to be a tornado a-brewin'. Scott realizes this and somehow shoves Nancy unconscious. I still don't get how this works, but eventually, Nancy comes to and drives to the theater where she unlocks the tornado shelter for a few seconds, proceeds to rush out during an active storm when she deems it safe enough, and then sits there while Debbie further explains everything that was going on. If Nancy needs to chase down Scott, Debbie, maybe don't hold her up for several minutes with uninteresting exposition. It's not the worst offender in terms of writing, but it also isn't good, so I give it 2 stars. The actual car chase is fine, I guess, but it's another bird's eye view puzzle, and frankly, it makes me laugh more than anything because Nancy is driving around like a literal maniac. And this is not supposed to be funny, it's supposed to be intense. 2 stars for the end puzzle as well. Number 8, Tomb of the Lost Queen. The culprit for this Egyptian-themed mystery is done reasonably well. Abdullah is clearly the mastermind, and clues have been riddled throughout the whole mystery, hinting at how he has staged the dig site and has forced Lily to do a lot of his dirty work for him by intimidating and manipulating her. This dynamic is quite interesting and is explained well through clues that we find during the course of the game. So 1 star is all Tomb of the Lost Queen deserves for the culprit. The writing at the end, unfortunately, isn't quite as successful. There are quite a few loose ends that are either left hanging, are explained only peripherally, or are just kind of weird. Jamila pretty suddenly is like, Abdullah is the culprit, and then is like, here as a secret key that unlocks a secret gate, that unlocks a secret puzzle, that unlocks a secret way out of the tomb. And she knows this somehow because her mother was part of the Daughters of Nefertari, but why didn't her mother know this or have the key so that she could escape years ago? Again, confusing. Because the conversations with Lily are decent, I'm giving the writing a bit of a break and only giving it 2 stars, but only just. I will not, however, forgive the puzzle. I despise bird's eye view puzzles because they break immersion immediately, and I absolutely cannot tolerate them at the end of a game when the immersion should be at its peak. The tile hopping puzzle is extremely weird, impossible, and unrealistic, and it deserves no breaks for effectively ruining the ending of this game. Number 7, Labyrinth of Lies. Next on the list, we have another unique culprit situation, in that all the characters are the culprits. I personally kind of despise this because it feels like a cop-out. You don't have to do anything cool or interesting if everyone is to blame. However, because this is the only time it happens in the series, I do feel like I need to give it some points for being creative. It is at least unexpected, so I award Labyrinth of Lies 2 stars in the culprit category. Similarly, the writing at the end is actually quite fun. Nancy spends time running around the sets, getting captured by Thanos, escaping from Thanos, trying to convince Niobe and Grigor to join her side, and then gets knocked out and tied up so that she has to listen to Xenia's "I'm the queen of the underworld" speech. It's actually quite fun and extra dramatic, and I'm kind of here for it. I love a good villain speech, and although it's kind of ridiculous, I think the end writing only needs 1 star. The puzzle, on the other hand, oofda. Just like with Haunting of Castle Malloy, this game was already puzzle heavy, and the end does not let up. Nancy has to solve a puzzle to unchain herself, solve a puzzle to fix the bridge over literal lava, and solve a puzzle to open the door to leave the chamber. All of these puzzles can be difficult and time-consuming, which means that they halt all our momentum and painfully extend the culprit reveal to resolution timeline. 3 stars is therefore easily deserved in the puzzle category. Number 6, The Silent Spy. Let's start with the positives. The end puzzle isn't horrible. Nancy is essentially defusing bombs, which is exciting and doable given the constraints of the puzzle, while still presenting a decent challenge. It also makes sense that she should be defusing a bomb since she's in the spy realm. 1 star for puzzle crimes. Unfortunately, that's where the positives stop. Both the culprit and the writing for the ending of The Silent Spy deserve 3 stars each. I've griped about Ewan McGregor before, but his literal motive for this entire case is because I can? That's not a motive, Ewan. I just can't. It makes me so mad. Because his motive is so trash, the writing situation ends up being pretty dire as well. The script tries to vaguely explain his evil plan, but it goes nowhere because there isn't any reason for Ewan to have done what he did. The ending, and frankly the entire mystery, would have made more sense if Revenant was the primary focus, with the primary mystery being solving the cold case of Kate Drew's death. Instead, we get a messy ending and a whole heap of confusing plot lines, none of which resolve themselves in a satisfying way. So much potential, but very little success. Number 5, The Creature of Kapu Cave. The culprit situation in this game is hardly good, but it's also not a complete dumpster fire. We find out at the very end that Big Island Mike and Pua Mapu are working in tandem to try and cover for Big Island Mike's debt by attacking the local pineapple crop at the Healy Healy Research Center so that they can get the land, which apparently was supposed to revert to Big Island Mike in the event that the center shut down. His motive is fixing his debt, which is fine, I suppose, even though it's really cliche and not something that we even find out until the very end. I give the culprits 2 stars, but the writing and the end puzzle have to get 3 each. Because yikes, talk about exposition dump. None of the useful information that we find out at the end of the game was hinted at or discoverable at any other point in the game. This makes the whole endeavor less of a mystery and more of a disjointed walking adventure in Hawaii. And scuba diving, I guess. I don't even want to talk about how Pua apparently sneakily followed Frank through the ocean maze. You don't sneakily scuba dive. I'm a certified scuba diver, and trust me, it's not really a thing you can do because of physics. Anyway, the puzzle is also atrocious. It's the exact same end puzzle as Tomb of the Lost Queen, and commits the exact same crimes. Bird's eye view, complete lack of immersion, impossible, unrealistic, and weird. Boo. Number 4, Midnight in Salem. Ah, Midnight in Salem. Funny how this game seems to find its way onto all of my worst lists. Just like everything else in Midnight in Salem, the ending was disappointing. First of all, there really isn't an end puzzle. Like, there's no way to thwart the culprit other than strength in numbers and blocking the doorway, which isn't even a choice. Nancy and Deirdre just kind of do it. There also isn't even a choice regarding how Nancy can respond to the culprit during the whole long exposition dump. Pointless conversational ending. Detectives just have to sit there while What's-Her-Face blathers on with her lies and Judge What's-His-Name listens like a big old buffoon. The complete lack of puzzle and furthermore interaction earns Midnight in Salem a solid 3 stars here, which it also earns in the writing category. It's just bad. There's no suspense, there's no excitement, there's no intrigue, there's no banter, there's nothing unique. It's literally just culprit denies any wrongdoing. Nancy's like, no, I have proof, look. Culprit defends wrongdoing as actually the right thing to do in a way that, long story short, is honestly kind of disrespectful. Nancy says some stuff back. Culprit kind of just gives up but is really mad about it. The end. It's not interesting or well written. The only glimmer of hope for this ending is that the culprit, whose name I legitimately had to look up because she's that unmemorable, does have an actual motive, however twisted it may be, and could actually be gleaned from clues in the game. She still is not a compelling character in any way, and only satisfies the bare minimum of what a culprit needs. So, 2 stars it is. Number 3, Secrets Can Kill from 1998, the original. Now this one is a little weird. As far as Nancy Drew mysteries go, you can't really get more dark or intense than Nancy, our heroine, pulling a literal gun on someone. This is essentially the end puzzle, as Nancy needs to grab the gun at the end that Mitch Dillon was attempting to use to kill Daryl Gray, and then figure out that she needs to hold it on him. It's not really that much of a puzzle, but it's at least something, so I'm going with 2 stars here. The culprit, though, is someone that we don't interact with in the game. Mitch Dillon is not a main character, and is kinda just someone that shows up at some point, quite violently, I may add. Having the culprit be some rando that we have no real emotional connection to is just kind of a bad move, so 3 stars it is. The same goes for the writing at the ending, because actually there really isn't any writing either. Nancy sorta just watches all of the action unfold from an undisclosed location afar. I mean, it's exciting, so there's that, but there isn't any fun writing to even discuss. It needs to get 3 stars in this category because it doesn't even do the bare minimum in this area. Sad, but true. Number 2, Ransom of the 7 Ships. Let's start with the sort of positives. The end puzzle of finding a way out of the hole that the culprit throws us in is fine-ish. Using this puzzle as a way to finally find Bess is lazy at best, because we only successfully find her when we get captured as well. But escaping El Toro's secret room doesn't take too ridiculously long, and is at least possible to do. A 2-star puzzle offender. The culprit and the writing, however, oof. 3-star offenders for sure. First off, the culprit is literally the only person on the island that we interact with besides George and the wretched monkeys. So yeah, we know who the culprit is. The surprise reveal that Johnny Roll is actually Dwayne Powers only makes sense if you've played the game that he originally appeared in, and even then, the timeline is way off. Not to mention the fact that Johnny Roll, a white man, was disguising himself as a man with a hairstyle and accent that at the very least appropriates the black culture of Jamaica. As a culprit, he is deeply flawed because of how simultaneously obvious and not obvious he ends up being. The writing in his reveal is tangential and adds information to Dwayne Powers that wasn't even included in Stay Tuned for Danger. So how are we supposed to know any of this stuff? He secretly wanted to be an actor? Since when? I really just can't. And finally, number 1, the Shattered Medallion. I'll save us some time and just go ahead and say that I awarded the Shattered Medallion 3 stars in all 3 categories. Because it deserves it. Kiri is a dumb culprit. She has no motive, and if there are actually cameras all over the place because of the reality TV show, then she really had no logical means or opportunity because it would be so easy to use video footage to prove her guilt. One could argue that she's playing it up for the cameras that aren't even rolling because Sunny is literally doing nothing. But even that is a stupid motive for a culprit. This is supposed to be a mystery. Can I please get a more compelling villain? I have discussed in a previous video how much I hate the end puzzle as well. I'll link that in a card in the upper corner. Long story short, the puzzle is very poorly explained, and its ultimate purpose is to basically make pretty constellations on the ceiling that Nancy and Sunny know nothing about and can do nothing with, except make metaphorical statements. Again, this is supposed to be a mystery? The writing ties into both of these problems. Nothing is actually explained in the script. We don't even get a decent exposition dump to help fill in the missing pieces. The ultimate ending is that we know nothing, Sunny knows nothing, and his grandpa is just sending him on wild goose chases to, I don't know, build character? It's unclear, it's woeful, it's a bad ending. And there you have it, fellow detectives. As a quick summary, I would like to point out that 9 out of 10 games on this list are in the last half of the Nancy Drew series. It seems that as the series progressed, interesting culprits and endings became less of a focus as the priorities turned to graphics and puzzles. While the earlier games focused a great deal more on the plot, partially because they had to, as that was how those games could stand out back then, a good chunk of the later games kind of left plot to the wayside, which may have its perks in some areas, but clearly not in the land of good culprits and endings. But do you agree with me? Please feel free to let me know down in the comments below what you think of this list. Are there any games that you think I missed, or any games that don't deserve to be on this list? Let me know. I love interacting with you all in the comments section. Anyway, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.